New Chevy Blazer. One of a kind. It's a car. It's a truck. It's more than both.
My last episode was part 1 of my 20-car list of the worst examples of car model name recycling, where automakers reach into their list of old car names and slap it on a new model. Recycling a car model sometimes works well if you evoke some nostalgia for the original, but more often than not, the new model doesn't live up to the original. Here is a continuation of my top 20 worst recycled car names.
I love being under house arrest.
This is my old car.
It's not personal. It's just a game. I don't know where we parked. I was following you.
For my US-based viewers, if you are looking to sell your old car or searching for that special old car you once had, check out the My Old Car Exchange. Go to myoldcar.loma.tech and sign up today. I've included this link in the description below. A big thank you to Loma for creating and managing this site. Here's a quick rundown of the cars that were featured in part 1. Number 20, Dodge and Chrysler Aspen.
A new Dodge Aspen for a small car at a small price. It's unbelievable.
Number 19, Ford Bronco and Bronco 2.
The all-new 1984 Bronco 2.
Key to a new driving force.
Number 18, Dodge Lancer.
A force that lets you set your sights even higher. Dodge Lancer.
Gentlemen, we can rebuild him.
Number 17, Chevy Trailblazer.
Better than he was before.
Who are you?
I'm your inner child.
Number 16,
Get in.
AMC and Dodge Hornet.
What you really need in life is some freaking torque.
What?
Number 15, Acura Integra.
Taken to the back roads, we found that like many Acuras, it is a highly capable machine.
Number 14, Dodge Challenger.
Among sporty Japanese-built cars, 2 of the best buys are Challenger and Sapporo.
Number 13, Dodge Dart.
Start by making an award-winning car. Now imagine the worst-case scenario. Worse than that.
You shaped it in your mind. Total performance.
Number 12, Toyota Supra.
Now the all-new Toyota Supra brings it alive.
Number 11,
0 to 50 in 6 seconds.
Dodge Charger.
That's Charger 2.2, America's driving machine.
Number 10, Jeep Gladiator.
That's different.
The original use of this model name goes back so far that I suspect most of you watching this didn't even know the current Gladiator isn't the first Jeep to have that name. The Jeep brand was originally part of Willys Motors that produced Jeeps during World War II. Willys changed its name to Kaiser Jeep in 1963, and it was Kaiser's design behind the Gladiator pickup that launched the year earlier. The Gladiator's body-on-frame pickup design shared its basic frame architecture and front end with the Wagoneer, Jeep's four-wheel drive station wagon, another name you'll see later in this list. When Kaiser Jeep was purchased by American Motors in 1970, the Gladiator name was dropped. Jeep would later add the Comanche name to its compact pickup that shared the Jeep Cherokee XJ platform, but the full-size Jeep pickup was dropped following AMC's acquisition by Chrysler. It was that acquisition that allowed Jeep to still own the Gladiator name, and they decided to bring it back on a new pickup in 2019, based on the Jeep Wrangler. Jeep had not offered a pickup since it was part of AMC, so initially they couldn't make new Gladiators fast enough, and early models were often sold with big markups. However, 4 years later, most Gladiators have been sitting on dealer lots for hundreds of days, and are no longer the popular value-oriented pickup that the original once was.
Hands at 10 and 2.
Number 9, Mitsubishi Eclipse and Eclipse Cross.
You at the wheel feeling like a big boss in the all-new 2018 Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross.
The original Mitsubishi Eclipse was one of 3 cars that shared the launch of Diamond Star Motors, a joint venture between Mitsubishi and Chrysler, complete with their own combined headquarters and assembly plant in Illinois. The Eclipse, along with its platform mates, the Plymouth Laser and Eagle Talon, were launched in 1989, when small sport coupes were still popular. However, just a couple years later, Chrysler sold their stake, and the Laser and Talon were now being built via contract with Mitsubishi. The Laser entered production in 1994, and the Talon in 1999, leaving the Eclipse to soldier on alone for 2 more generations, the last one ending its run in 2011. Despite the Eclipse having always been a 2-door, 4-seat sports coupe, Mitsubishi decided to bring the name back just 6 years later, but as a 4-door compact crossover. Known as the Eclipse Cross, it's an unusual name choice, as it has no connection to the original Eclipse coupe. Even worse, the Eclipse Cross for the US market is now built in Japan, not Illinois as the original was. With only around 10,000 sold here each year, and looking like the millions of other crossovers out there, it will never have the fan base the original once had.
Yeah, yo, I'm burning the mic. Better hit your signal on, cause we about to turn right. Yeah,
Number 8, Ford Thunderbird.
And the car's as gorgeous inside as it is outside, right?
You bet. In fact, it's got this unique white leather interior, which is just like butter.
This one also made it onto my sales flops and Weird Ford episodes, but I think it also belongs on this list, as Ford was clearly trying to evoke nostalgia for the 1955 Thunderbird when they used the same name on a new version released in 2001. Retro styling was a hot trend during this time, and Ford clearly hoped the buying public would forget that for the vast majority of its lifespan, the Ford Thunderbird was a large coupe with a back seat, not a two-seat roadster. But the latter is what the Thunderbird originally was at its debut in 1955, and was intended as a competitor to the Chevy Corvette that had launched 2 years earlier. However, after only 3 short years, Ford relaunched the Thunderbird as a much larger coupe and convertible with a back seat, as customer feedback pushed Ford execs to change it to a more practical body style. With the exception of a short-lived 4-door version in the late 60s, the T-Bird maintained a large coupe design to the end of its 10th generation in 1997. But a concept of the new Roadster appeared just 2 years later, and then went up for sale in 2001, using the Lincoln LS platform as its base, as well as sharing much of the Lincoln's interior design. Ford quickly learned that the number of people who loved the original Thunderbird Roadster were few and far between, and after 4 years of continually declining sales, Ford quietly dropped it just 4 years later.
Oh!
Number 7. Jeep Wagoneer.
Are you saying you'd rather work mornings?
This model name is nearly synonymous with the Jeep brand, and came to be at around the same time the aforementioned Gladiator in 1962, as they shared the same Kaiser Jeep platform. As the Wagoneer, it was classified as, not surprisingly considered the name, a station wagon. Although today its high ground clearance and available four-wheel drive would make most consider it to be an SUV, especially since it was on a truck platform. Officially designated as the SJ, the original Wagoneer was offered with simulated wood grain to fit the typical wagon style. After it switched ownership from Kaiser Jeep to American Motors, the Wagoneer was promoted more as a luxury model by 1978. With AMC's financial stability sliding in the early 80s, they couldn't afford to redesign the Wagoneer, so it remained on the same platform until 1991, including 5 years under ownership of Chrysler, for a record at the time of 29 years for the same platform. But before it ended, Chrysler tried to squeeze out more sales by adding the Wagoneer name to the highest end trim of the Cherokee XJ in 1984, and in turn renaming the original Wagoneer to Grand Wagoneer. Even the Grand Cherokee was offered a high trim Wagoneer version, complete with the same fake wood grain, but for just 1 year in 1993. Today, Stellantis offers a Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer on their own distinct and quite large platform, and typically selling for around $100 grand, which may be why they're having a little trouble selling them lately, as Jeep was never supposed to be that upscale.
Son of a bitch is mom!
Guys, you want some water?
Number 6. Fiat 500.
You're losing it.
This is the only car on this list whose original version was never sold in the US or Canada. Known in its home country as the Fiat Cinquecento, the 500 got its name from its two-cylinder engine's displacement in cubic centimeters.
The earliest cars developed 13 horsepower.
Although that figure was rounded up from the true figure of 479.
But don't worry, because this one is a bit later and has 17.
Initially launched in Italy in 1957, it was marketed as the New 500, or Nuova Cinquecento. Designed for the tight-fitting city roads across Europe, the 500 was only 6 feet in length and only 4 1/3 feet high. Despite the cramped interior, Fiat still managed to fit in a back seat, and even offered a sunroof. The Fiat 500 was produced nearly unchanged until 1975, and selling over 3.8 million units. Then in 2007, Fiat released an all-new 500 that shared nothing with the original other than the name. Not long before Fiat officially merged with Chrysler in 2014, they began exports of the 500 to the US and Canada in 2012. Although the popularity of SUVs took a hit in the 2000s, thanks to high gas prices, SUV sales rebounded by the time the 500 reached our shores. But I suspect bringing it here was to improve Fiat Chrysler's average fuel economy, so that they could still sell more profitable Ram pickups. Despite the sporty Abarth model that arrived in 2009, the base 500 and its L and X variants never caught on with the SUV-happy American buyers, and all exports stopped by the end of 2023.
Sure this is a Mirage? The Fiat over there has 4 doors. Fiat only makes small cars. It's not real.
Yeah, you're right.
Only the electric 500e remains for sale here, but its small size and range means its long-term future here is in serious doubt.
Yeah, don't do that.
Number 5. Chevy Blazer.
What is that? That's a Blazer?
No, I am not a Chevy Blazer. I'm just a bastardized version of what I used to be.
This one may seem to contradict the parameters of this list, considering the current Chevy Blazer has been a huge seller for General Motors, with over 400,000 sold since its debut in 2019. But that's not why the Blazer is on this list. The original Blazer, first sold in 1969, was internally designated as the K5. This was back before the term SUV, or Sport Utility Vehicle, became as ubiquitous as it is today. The original K5 Blazer only offered 2 doors, as it was essentially a full-bodied version of the Chevy CK pickup. It even offered a removable roof until safety regulations ended that option in 1975. By the 1980s, SUV's popularity was growing, so GM reworked their compact S10 pickup line to become the S10 Blazer. The full-size K5 stayed in production until 1991, whereas the compact Blazer lasted all the way until 2005. GM didn't completely abandon the Blazer name by selling the midsize Trailblazer from 2002 to 2009. Most everyone thought the Blazer name was relegated to history until Chevrolet introduced a new midsize crossover in 2019 with the same name. The outpouring of hate was immediate, and initially I expected it could hurt the new Blazer sales. Instead, I suspect most of its recent buyers don't even know that Chevy used to sell a body-on-frame truck under the same name, or simply don't care. Sales have been steady, including a new EV version on an entirely different platform with the same name.
What the hell? A talking Chevy?
You better watch your back, Mach.
But it ain't no real Blazer.
I will siphon your gas, and you won't be able to roll onto the corner.
Is that the corner where your mom works?
Number 4. Pontiac GTO. This one would also be eligible for a list of recycled car names that cross company lines, not just within the same automaker, as Ferrari introduced the letters GTO on its 250 in 1962. The Gran Turismo Omologato, which means Grand Tour Homologated in English, or a Grand Touring car that has been upgraded and certified for racing, didn't remain an exclusively Italian name for long. John DeLorean was among several at GM's Pontiac division that were tasked with revitalizing the brand, which included bypassing a few rules to get GM's new A-body fitted with a bigger engine than what had been approved. The 1964 Pontiac GTO would offer an optional 6.4-liter V8 and would eventually hit 6.6 liters in 1967. But fuel efficiency requirements would drop horsepower ratings, and the GTO as a standalone model was gone after 1973. Pontiac tried keeping the GTO name as a trim level on the Ventura for 1974, before killing it for good, or so we all thought. In 2004, in a desperate move to keep Pontiac relevant, GM restyled the Holden Monaro, built in Australia, to become the new GTO. Its rounded, subtle styling didn't exactly scream muscle car. Despite an upgrade to the 400 horsepower LS2 V8 in 2005, sales kept sliding, no longer justifying the high import cost, and the GTO was history again in 2006. With only 40,000 total sold over 3 years.
Find yours at Pontiac.com/GTO.
I remember you used to drive that crappy blue Chevy Nova.
Number 3.
What are you driving now?
Chevy Nova.
Same crappy blue Chevy Nova.
The Nova is similar to the last entry, the GTO, in that its early years offered a muscle car V8 engine performance, but the base model was also offered with a much more economical inline 4-cylinder. Initially known as a Chevy 2, it first arrived in 1962 as a more conventional small car alternative to a similarly sized Corvair, as the Chevy 2 had the engine in the front, unlike the Corvair's rear engine. Although Nova was the original name considered, GM execs wanted to have the Chevrolet cars start with the letter C, so the name Nova was used for the higher-end trim. 1968 introduced the Nova SS, or Super Sport, which is when the model peaked in power and popularity, as decreasing power and focus on economy and value made the Nova less desirable by its end in 1979. But in the early 80s, GM began a long-running but controversial partnership with Toyota to rework an existing California factory to build a rebadged version of the Toyota Corolla.
Witness the birth of a bright new star, created through the joint effort of General Motors and Toyota, Nova.
This new subcompact front-drive 4-cylinder was given the name Nova, presumably to build off its reputation as an economy car. However, those who remembered the V8 power of the Nova SS stayed far away. The Toyota-built Nova was canceled in 1988, but technically it didn't really go away, as it was renamed the Prism the following year, as part of GM's new Geo brand. Number 2, Pontiac LeMans. So yes, for my French-speaking viewers, I know I didn't pronounce the name of this car correctly. But as you can clearly tell if you listen to this last ad, I'm not alone.
Pontiac LeMans.
In fact, the way you heard it in this ad is the only way I ever knew this car, until I heard it pronounced as Le Mans. And then I only realized it was because it was in reference to the city in France, and the world-famous racing circuit that has been running each year there for over 100 years. Like the earlier entry, the GTO, Pontiac entered the 1960s with a goal to turn around their stodgy image and bring in younger buyers, with more youth and performance-oriented models. The LeMans first arrived as a top trim level of the compact Pontiac Tempest, but in 1964, it moved up to its own mid-size model, sharing the A-body with the GTO. By 1967, the largest V8 displaced 7.5 liters, but was down to just 250 horsepower just a couple years later. Although some models like the GTO disappeared during the malaise era, the LeMans stayed on until 1981, although downsized to meet fuel efficiency mandates. We thought the LeMans was gone for good, but then Pontiac made the highly questionable decision to take a car from South Korea, made by partner Daewoo, and give it the name LeMans in 1988. This was the very early days of Daewoo, and the poor build quality and reliability actually made US-built GM cars a far better choice. Despite a sad, short-lived attempt at a sporty GSE Aero coupe, sales tanked, and the LeMans was mercifully killed off by 1993. Number 1. Ford Mustang and Mustang Mach-E. You all had to know this one would be on this list. This car is not my number 1 because the new EV Mustang has been a flop. In fact, its sales have actually risen year after year. Instead, I put it at number 1 because there are few car model names left that have been around so long that they have become iconic, and as such, should not be messed with. The name Mustang meets that criteria. Under the leadership of Lee Iacocca, the 1965 Mustang sold over 418,000 units in its first year of production, more than double Ford's initial estimates. Although the Mustang went through a sad and forgettable phase when the cheaper Pinto-based Mustang II debuted in 1974, as well as some cheaper options during the 80s Fox body era, the Mustang would bounce back with a retro-styled model in 2005, and power kept increasing with the return of the GT350 and GT500. But then in 2019, Ford released photos of a new crossover EV with a very familiar and unexpected logo on the front. They called it the Mustang Mach-E, a play on the name Mach 1 that was first used as an optional performance package for the Mustang back in 1968.
Mustang Mach 1.
Although top-tier models can make as much as 480 horsepower, its performance figures and the fact that it's an EV isn't where the biggest backlash arose. It was the fact that Ford chose to give a four-door crossover the name Mustang. It was clearly a marketing ploy to use the name to help draw in potential buyers. Although sales have gone up, some of that is due to significant price cuts thanks to too much inventory and slowing EV demand. Even more sad is that the Mach-E actually sold more units than the traditional gas-powered Mustang in 2024. To me, that still doesn't mean that putting the name Mustang on a crossover EV was ever a good idea.
I used to have a Mustang back when cars made sounds.
Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 70s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode, leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
You're gonna freeze to death. Who cares? See you tomorrow.